I can understand that in many countries, really, the governments are huge problems because the corruption is so bad. But the corruption is also a sign of inequality. And the corruption is also another sign that the elite are controlling our politicians in a very, very bad manner.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Future Frame TV. I'm Krozer, your host for the Inequalities channel, presented by Traces.Dreams. I'm here today with a very special guest, Djaffar Shalchi, who is an entrepreneur and an activist, or a social civil society philanthropist. He's the co-founder of HumanAct, and he'll be telling us in a moment what this entails. And he also has two very particular characteristics that he unites in his person, that is being a very wealthy person and yet being also in favor of taxing wealthy people. Welcome to the program, Djaffar.
Thank you.
Djaffar, I wanted to ask you as the first question whether you already had a spacewalk today in the morning, but maybe more importantly, outer space traveling is kind of fashionable these days. Do you think there is necessarily a connection between having stratospheric wealth and going to the stratosphere?
Are you thinking about Bezos?
Of course. Well, of course. Well, Bezos and Virgin founder and everybody is wanting to go to space today. And I'm wondering whether that's like the ultimate goal or if there's something else that you can do with a lot of wealth that you amass.
Actually, the first time I heard somebody ask Bezos about what he was doing about all his money and how he will help the world and the situation that we are in, then his answer was that his call was to explore the universe and, try to make his space stuff and so on. And I felt so sorry about his answer because we know that we don't have any technology to escape this planet for the next minimum 200 years. And we are destroying it so fast. And I just was imagining, why could he not save the billions of people who was living in extreme poverty and our extreme climate crisis that is getting us, everybody, out of this, and how he could sit there and say, yes, he has a plan about what to do in the space. And I was like, okay, what about to start at home first, It's always start with yourself, your family, your friends, your own planet, and then you can go further. So it was just like, in a way, I was not surprised, but because many of the rich does lose the connection and left their food on this planet. And yeah, I'm sorry to hear there were the people thinking and acting like they're doing. It's just showing us how they're disconnected from the normal life.
So your answer, you say, would be different to this question. What would your answer be? What do you do with wealth?
My answer would be very clear and very simple and logical for me, because like me and Bezos and all rich guys, they didn't do it themselves. They are not self-made. They did it like generation of the people in the countries that have built up the system that we could benefit of. Many of the technologies that they get is actually coming from the governments. The governments are the people who paying their taxes to do that. So his wealth is not only his, he's obligated to give that back actually. In my opinion, you owe it because you did it by standing on their shoulders. So to say you are self-made, your own money, that's bullshit for me. My clear opinion is you have a moral obligation to give back to the society that have benefited and give you so much.
Maybe you can say a little bit more about yourself and your story at this point for people to understand why you hold this point of view. And it's important, of course, to know that you're placed in Denmark, a society that has a very large redistribution program for people that are in different conditions. Does that have an influence on your outlook, or is that just something you're born with? Or how come you see these things so differently from somebody like Bezos, for example?
I think that the society, the people you are connected with, the environmental thing, everything is inflicting you. And of course, it inflicted me. Actually, I'm not Danish. I was born in Tehran in 1961. When my mother took me and my 4 siblings in a bus and took us to Europe. And in Europe, of course, in the age of 8, I was 9 years old at that time, we really fast came inside the society and saw how beautiful the system was in Scandinavia, because we have the welfare system where even a single mother with 5 children with no education or anything could actually have the opportunity for her children to go to school, have healthcare system and everything. So I could go to school, I could go to the university, and I became a civil engineer in the construction and could set up my own business with my wife at a very young age, actually. And that is actually the American dream, but just doesn't in the US, but in Scandinavia, in Copenhagen, because we actually have it still here, even that it has gone bad the last 3-4 decades, but still we have it. So, of course, to see a country like Denmark, a small country with 5.5 million people, we don't have any oil or gas or any big natural resources, but we have one thing: we all pay our fair share of the taxes. So we have actually and live by the dream that we don't leave anybody behind us, and we don't have extreme poverty at any kind of poverty here in Scandinavia because everybody paid their fair share. So when I became wealthy, it was of course clear to me that I have to give most of the money back again. And that's why me and my wife established Human Act in 2015 at the same time that the Sustainable Development Goals were adopted in the UN. So, of course, the Danish society, the welfare system has learned me a lot of things, and we can do it if we all is fair and distribute our resources in a more fair way than they are doing it in other countries.
I want to come back to Human Act in a moment, but I wanted to ask you before, do you think it's necessary for a person to see these differences? Like you were saying, you came from Iran and then to Denmark, and myself, I grew up in Danish context and came to Mexico. So I know that these different systems exist, that you can have a system with more equality, if you will, or less poverty and less inequality. You know that as well because you saw these differences. Do you think that's necessary for somebody to see these differences to get this kind of consciousness, or is that something that people can learn, or how do you acquire these perceptions?
I'm 100% sure that one thing is to think about it, talk about it, but another thing is to feel it and see it firsthand. Me coming from the Middle East and later on see how Middle East is conflicted with wars and everything because of the richdom that the Middle East has in oil and gas. And later on traveling in a lot of countries, especially in Africa, and see how poverty is inflict me, of course, that's for sure. If you listen to the history of Bill and Melinda Gates, how they started their philanthropic work, it was the same. They were going on a vacation in Africa, in a safari, and then they saw the small villages and extreme poverty, and they came home and say, should we not do something about that? And I have many examples that when you are seeing it and touching it, and that do something to your heart, and I'm sure that it inflicts you, and I'm sure of that.
So that's let's come back then to your organization. One day you woke up and decided that you will start a humanitarian organization and rid the world of its problems, or how was that?
No, actually, but it began much younger age. As I told you, when I came to Denmark, it was in the '69, exactly 10 years before the Iranian Revolution, in '79. So in '79, I was about 18 years old, and it inflicted me and my family a lot because soon after came the war, and there was a many problems in my country, and also many of my family members was in big trouble. So since then, actually, I just get it as much money I could collect or borrow and send it to my family in Iran. And so you can say I started at a young age to help those close to me as much as I could. Even I just went to school and didn't have any money actually. But I did what I could early stage, and I saw a lot of the unjust things that was happening around me, and also in the Middle East. So I think I maybe unconscious always knew what I will do, and has the full support of my family. So it doesn't start at just like one night in 2015 say, hey, I want to do something like that. I did it young, much earlier when I didn't have any money actually.
And Human Act has several different projects, but it has one specific one which we're interested in here now, of course, which is the Millionaires for Humanity initiative. Could you tell us what Millionaires for Humanity means and what you guys do?
Yeah, the short story is that when we started Human Act, we realized very fast that to solve the extreme poverty situation, you must solve other problems also. So the Sustainable Development Goals was perfect way to start because you cannot take one thing out. You can't take extreme poverty without looking extreme climate change or the wars and conflicts and so on and so on. And when I looked inside that, I realized very fast that the financing gap for the Sustainable Development Goals was about $3 trillion. So since I was good at making money, I said, okay, I want to see what I could do to solve inequality and also to find what could be the solution for the Sustainable Development Goals. So I contacted Piketty, Jeffrey Sachs, and many other economics. But Jeffrey Sachs said yes, then we worked through 3 years together at the UN, through the UN system, established 2 reports, and came up with the Move Humanity program, 1% wealth tax on the world's billionaires. That was enough to fill the gap for the low-income countries, 49 countries that couldn't solve their financing gap by themselves. And that leads later on last year to Millionaires for Humanity, because like we were talking about before the program, is how do you get the message out to normal population? How do you get the media to say anything about this situation and how inequality is out of control? But by getting the millionaires to talk about it, that was something everybody could like. So when we made our first letter summer last year in 2020, we got huge awareness around it. Then he was contacted by Forbes, newspapers from Korea, Spain, even Japan, and people liked it a lot. And even Antonio Guterres from the UN mentioned us in a speech last year when he heard about the letter. He was speaking about Mandela's I think it was his birthday or something in South Africa when he said, "Hey, I can see there's a group of millionaires that also talking about this," and he liked it a lot. And they know, of course, we have the Move Humanity program with the 1% wealth tax that can give us enormous amount of money. And since the world's wealth is about $400 trillion today, and the top 1% has more than 200 trillion of it. So imagine a 1%, 2% is more enough to solve all our problems, actually. So Millionaires for Humanity was just a good platform where we only collect millionaires to come on board, and we hope that it can grow and be very, very strong in each country. So we can go and knock at the doors of our governments and say, please tax us just with 1%, 2 or 3. That will be okay. It will not even get us to get more poor, but just take a little bit of our revenue every year. So there's a huge win-win for all of us. So that was how Millionaires for Humanity started last year.
And how did your friends, let's say millionaire friends, react to that?
That's not easy. One of the way we are doing it, we have until now make poolings in more than 15 countries where we go out and ask people what they say about a 1% wealth tax. And most of the countries, we are about 60, 65%. Indonesia was 79%. And that way we get the media to talk about it, and then the millionaires can see what we are doing. And we also have, of course, a team in Copenhagen that is reaching out to them, send them letters and say, hey, we are doing this and this. Could you be interested to be a member? And to be a member, it's very easy to be a member of Millionaires for Humanity because you only have to put your name on our website with a quote and say, I'm all for a tax.
And also be a millionaire, of course.
Yeah, you have to be you have to be multimillionaire. You have to have more than $2 million and on your wealth to be a member. But you don't have to pay any fee or anything. You can be active member, or you can be passive member. So it's quite easy, and but it's hard. It's very hard because many of the millionaires, many is agreeing actually, but they're afraid to come and put their faces on because they're afraid of the consequences.
And what are the consequences?
You will not be in the good club, when you are going out and talking about the tax. Like Sometimes I've been called the trader of my class because, because many make philanthropic, but to say tax is different things. They sort of kind feel that they are losing the control when they say tax is okay. They still want to do it by themselves. I never forget a conversation I had with Bill Gates in September 2019 at the UN, when I asked him and say, what do you think about the 1% wealth tax? And he say, no. I'm doing it myself. Philanthropy is good, but taxing doesn't matter how little or more is out of question. And that is the normal answer you get from rich people. They don't want to lose that kind of control. They think it's control. For me, it's not control. Control is for me to, help everybody and do your part because society have given you so much. Uh, then you give the power and the love from other people and not by just collecting more and more money.
How come tax is such a dirty word for wealthy people?
I think first is that I think they are thinking that they are losing the control of it. If they go up and say yes to it, they don't know, start maybe with one, but maybe go up to 5 or 6 or more. They're afraid of, to getting the door open on that part. And the second thing is that many of them say, hey, they don't believe that our governments can manage that kind of money. It goes to corruption and so on and so on. And when I asked them about they should take a look at Scandinavia, many of them just saying, yes, but that's small countries. You can do that. But it's another thing when you talk about big countries. But they should look at what is happening around them. If you take, Mexico or the US, you can see that more than half of the world is in the hands of the elite in the US, and they have huge problems with inequality and the healthcare system, infrastructure, and so on and so on. So it cannot keep on going. And the most scaring part of all this is that we really live in an unsafe world, and that will not benefit the elite because that's one thing that they really respect, that is safety. And we are losing it at a very fast tempo. I know Mexico is much worse than the US are, but you can take Brazil, you can take the other countries in America, and I think that the elite has to wake up and see what is going on. Do they want to live a life behind bars, or do they want an open society where the children and grandchildren can go to school without have bodyguards with them?
I think that's a very powerful argument that the inequalities of this sort affect everybody, right? Also those that think they can shield themselves from it. But we have a very specific situation here in Mexico where actually not only millionaires, but the general public has a very bad image of taxes. So we conducted a survey recently where people say inequality is a huge problem. They really want it to go down, but they'd rather not pay any taxes. How do you respond to people then that it's a good idea to invest in taxes rather than, for example, as some of your companions that prefer to invest in philanthropy?
I can understand that in many countries, really, the governments are huge problems because the corruption is so bad. But the corruption is also a sign of inequality. And the corruption is also another sign that the elite are controlling our politicians in a very, very bad manner. Behind every senator, you have a billionaire. Even in Scandinavia, you can buy yourself inside the parliaments if you want that. And today, to run and get elected in any parliaments, it requires you to have a lot of money to make a campaign. And who has the money? The rich people has the money. Unfortunately, we just not only have the money, but we also have the power to influence our politicians in a way that our democracy is under huge pressure. And that's, for me, is one of the worst things that can happen, and is coming also more and more closer to us in Europe. So my message is to the normal population is, no, we have to collect the right kind of people to come inside the governments, and then hope that we can have some kind of governments that we have in Scandinavia, where our tax money actually go back inside the schools, the health system, and so on, and where we have the lowest in corruption in the world. So it can be done, but it requires a lot of hard work, and it starts with the normal people to go and see who they can choose to go inside the governments, because there's not other way around this. We can't have rich people to go and provide schools and hospitals and so on. They can't do it.
Why do you say they can't do it?
They can't do it, and they won't do it, because the huge weakness in the most rich people is the enormous greed. Is never enough. It's not enough to have 100 million or 500 million. When you have 1 billion is not enough, then you have to have 10 billion. You have to go up, and it just go on and go on and go on. Even that most of us know that we can never use our money in our lifetime. Even not our children or grandchildren can use that kind of money. But still, we collect it like it was, I will never die. And that is another problem with the rich guys. They never think they're dying. They think they're immortal, They don't see that death in their hands. And that's why they're acting how they are doing.
The question about mortality is, of course, a very complicated one. But what do you think is going to happen with your wealth once you, hopefully, very, very long time from now, vanish from the earth?
I'm sure that I will have given more than 90% of my wealth away before I will go away. We have always done and give more than half of our wealth. So for me, will not be any problem, because my philosophy is, if you have a huge, huge bank account and you die, then you die in disgrace. And I don't want that. So we have to give it back, of course. Most of it when we live, and a little bit, of course, to our families.
Have you had some positive response as well from your colleagues or friends? Where there are some people that said, "Oh yes, I was so looking forward for somebody stepping up to finally ask for me to be taxed. Thank you."
Yeah, of course, we have members in Millionaires for Humanity. Some of them very active. Some Germans millionaires that have come forward has really been active a lot, and they're doing what they can. So I just hope that the more will have the courage to come forward and just give this little bit of help. And because the numbers is huge important, I think the top 1% in the world is about 55 million people. So my dream is just have, imagine 1% of them is 500,000. Or
How close are you to that goal?
oh, long way. Imagine Bill Gates started the Giving Pledge in 2010 when he said, "Let's give half of our wealth away while we are living." And since then, he have used 11 years. He only collected 6% of the billionaires. Only 6%. Imagine at that time, the most wealthy person on this planet. So that's telling us how difficult it is to get them come on board. And even Bill Gates could not keep his own promise, because in 2010, his wealth was $50 billion. He has given about $35 billion away the last 10 years. But imagine his wealth is today more than 100 billion. So from 50, he goes to 100. Even he has given more than 35 billion away. So he cannot even keep his own promise by giving more than half of his will. So, the founder of the Giving Pledge, and the 6% that he has collected has never proven that they have done anything or how much they have given. Because when we were investigating that through our Move Humanity program with the 1% wealth tax on billionaires, we interviewed some of them, me and Jeffrey Sachs. And those who talked with us was like, yes, I'm doing it. I'm giving more than one. And okay, how much every year and to what? But that was nothing. That was something they don't want to tell us. The transparency is zero from the wealthy persons. And the Giving Place has showed this hard. You have other NGOs in the US, like Patriotic Millionaires. They have been around for about 9 years now. They have something about 200 members only. So it's really telling us that it's so, so difficult to collect the millionaires to come on board and talk about taxes.
It's good that you like a challenge and you're in it for the long haul.
Yeah, but I will keep going and still have the dreams that we will be thousands of members. So nobody can ignore us, not the governments, not the press, and so on. But it's hard, like you start to say. It is really.
It reminds me, it's an interesting difference when you said in the beginning that people paid a lot of attention once you as millionaires came out saying we want to be taxed. And then you have, on the other hand, people like myself or many other scholars that are much more prolific, writing about these things for decades and saying millionaires should be taxed. And everybody says, no, not an interesting topic. And then millionaires come out and say, we want to be taxed, and everybody's going crazy. Is there a need, or is that a specific role that millionaires can take on in the fight against inequality?
Yeah, that's for sure, 100%, because many of us are examples in our society of how successful we have been. And we are very good at many things in business, and we are entrepreneurs. We create a lot of things, invent a lot of things, and so on. So people looked up to us. Of course, when we come out and say, hey, of course, we should pay something, be taxed more to keep our society environmental and so on and so on and so on. So, of course, our voices are really heard, and the politicians will really listen when we come out and say something, because they know that it is counting when we talk, because we have a lot of power, not only in the business, but in the media and so on and so on. So we have a huge obligation, and I hope that they lead with understand that and take that responsibility on their shoulders and come out and talk about this, because it's for their own interest and their children and grandchildren.
Djaffar, before we come to close with our program, I wanted to ask you whether you think back of 5-year Djaffar, did you ever imagine your future like that, or how was your future going to be? And how do you think of your future now?
I will say, since I get full time inside to work only for the foundation and to help other people, I never felt so good as I have done the last 7 years. So I will keep going, even if we don't get any members or what so on. So it's something, when you have started this, you can never stop it actually. So I just see myself just one stone at a time, one drop at a time, or one member at a time, and see how far I can go. And I'm sure many others will take it on and carry it on. And we have so many wonderful NGOs and others that is working for this. So I'm sure that we will reach something at some point. But I actually just take one day at a time and see what happens.
I forgot to mention that, of course, this organization, you have it together with your wife. So it's not even just you dealing with this, but you have to support, you support each other, right? I mean, that's definitely worth it.
Yeah.
Was there ever any quarreling between you about this idea, or did you completely agree on?
No, we were 100% on this together, and there was no problem at all. The only thing was that my wife always was sure that when I go inside something, I use too much time, so I will have less time for for the family. So that was the only thing. The rest was no problem at all.
Djaffar, thank you so much for joining us and explaining the perspective of millionaires on being taxed and why they should be taxed and how it's urgent to tax millionaires. And if you're a millionaire out there and you don't know what to do with your money, please join Djaffar and his Millionaires for Humanity. Thanks, Djaffar, for being here with us today.
Thanks to be with you.
And thank you all for watching another episode of Future Frame TV. I'm Elise Krozer, your host for the Inequalities channel. We hope you liked this episode, and we'll see you again next week for another conversation about inequalities. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks. Bye-bye.